Phantom Blade Zero was shown again at the end of the show. I think that was revealed sometime last year, maybe, but it is still very much clearly sort of a Souls-like experience. It would
incredibly looking Souls-like experience.
Yeah. And
this was one where I posted a screenshot of it in chat. This is a game that does not show off well on YouTube, unfortunately.
No,
it's very dark, like gray, green, black, fast moving with motion blur. If you take any still from this trailer, it looks like 720p. It's not. It's not.
You can't see anything. Yeah, it's a complete mess. And it's very likely UE5 based on what we're seeing, I would say.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, it's confirmed.
Okay, it is confirmed. So yeah. So it is indeed. It's hard to say what. So this is who's making this one again? Do you guys remember off the top of your head?
It's a studio that I don't actually recall. That's why I remember from last year.
It's a new one. S Game.
S Game. So S Game. What the heck have they done?
It's a mystery to me.
The music was a bit of East meets West in the trailer. If you noticed, there was like some twanging that you might expect from a Wild West.
It's a Chinese.
Yeah, they are Chinese. Yeah,
but then obviously there was some traditional Chinese instruments later on. So I think they are trying to do a like Wild West meets I don't know, Chinese folklore kind of look to everything. It would seem faster paced than your typical Souls game, though. It didn't look like Demon Souls,
more
for
like
example.
Sekiro. I would say.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. Also, maybe like some Bloodborne dodging in there.
We're kind of joking about this a little bit, but versus so many other popular types of games out there, Souls-likes are easily my favorite of the bunch. I think they're like they're solid. Like you get it's like Souls-likes today are kind of like a platformer game in the 90s where it's like it's a bread and butter kind of experience, but it's when done well, it's very rewarding and sort of engaging to like, because they're games that don't just hold your hand and you really have to like learn and master in a way, and I think that's very satisfying. So
I think this animates really well too, like just the action sets and all that. It looks very responsive and it looks very pleasing to play, which I think is great. And overall, this looks like a really competent looking UE5 title. It comes together really nicely. You have great looking assets and environments, and like especially the indirectly lit stuff comes together pretty well. The only thing that I'm worried about from this footage is the frame rate, which looks a little variable in this footage. And normally I wouldn't be one to comment too much on the state of a pre-release game's performance. But in this case, getting a UE5 title like this to hit a solid 60 on the console seems like potentially a bit of a challenge. And I think of the UE5 games that do use Lumen, I think just Jusant and Fortnite hit a pretty consistent 60 with those technologies. So I think it's a little bit of a question mark as to how a game that looks like this, that has this amount of high fidelity assets, that's trying to tie together environments of this complexity, if that can actually hit 60 FPS in the consoles. Now, of course, you could do like LFC, 120 hertz container, whatever. But just in terms of hitting like a really consistent 60, which I think a lot of players will probably expect from a title like this, it's a tough one, as we've seen obviously with
Lords of the Fallen.
With Lords of the Fallen, that was a tough one.
It's running pretty well these days, though, now, isn't it?
That's some bad moments.
It's better than launch, but like if you play it, man, I don't know. I don't think it still runs very well.
I feel like an occasional stutter drop is no big deal compared to like, sustained lows. And it seems like it's mostly just like hiccups rather than like sustained bad performance.
Well, it does have sustained bad perforance too. It's just not. Oh,
geez, okay.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like when Tom,
but that was like a uniquely bad effort in terms of tech. So I'm not comparing it to that necessarily. But like obviously,
was RoboCop? I forget. I only played on PC. How was that on consoles? I think you said it all right. I can't remember.
It did have a 60 FPS targeting mode on PS5 and Series X. And it hit 60 in a lot of content, but in larger firefights,
I see. It would
larger
dip.
Stuff, it tended to dip, especially like as you got deeper into the game,
Right.
as you got more complex areas, it just would consistently dip whenever there was any kind of action on screen. So that was not an ideal experience. I think UE5 in general for targeting 60 FPS on console, I think you have to be pretty careful with it, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far. It's not something that you can just scale to 60. It's something like John often says, you have to target it from the start of development. It's a tough one with that engine in particular. So I'd be interested to see how that pans out.